I want to knock away the dirt from the roots back into the hole.
Howdy doodle 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 do. Howdy doodle 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 do.
Howdy everybody. I'm here in an area of the finca, or the farm, that has a lot of clumping grass. And clumping grass is not necessarily good pasture. Now, the problem with clumping grass is that around the clump, the grass secretes chemicals that prevent other plants from growing around it. So what you wind up with are these areas where you have the clump and then there's kind of nothing else. And if you let it go long enough, you'll wind up with what amounts to a monoculture of clumping grass on the farm. And so I've been up here cutting some of this grass with the machete, not with the scythe, because I wanted to hold on to the grass when I was cutting it, because I'm getting it for Kathy and Sammy, our two sheep that are still sequestered right now. So I have to cut grass for them every day. So I've been cutting this in preparation for coming up here with a very special tool that will help to rid this area of the farm from the clumping grass. We'll never get rid of all of it. Don't get me wrong. We'll never get rid of all of it. But the idea is that we don't want a monoculture full of clumping grass. The other thing that is important to understand here, I've mentioned in a couple of other videos that when we first bought this farm, the ground was so hard that you could literally play a basketball, like a professional basketball game on it, and have it be competitive. It was just rocks and extremely hard ground. Now, usually we think of hard ground coming from overgrazing animals, but there's another cause of hard ground that we typically don't think about, and that is actually rain. So here in Nicaragua, we get torrential downpours, and if you stop to think about the amount of weight in water that is coming down, hitting the ground constantly, it's like these little hammers that are coming in and making the ground very hard. It creates a crust on top of the ground that makes it very difficult for water to seep through, and eventually the crust will crack, and then you can wind up with erosion the next time you get a rain, because the water will find its way down the crack, and you wind up with a big gully, erosion. So that's a big problem. And so it turns out that clumping grass, and actually Bermuda grass, which is another grass that we have a lot of here on the farm, love hard ground. They thrive in hard ground. And so not only does the clumping grass help to prevent other plants to secrete chemicals that prevent other plants from growing around it, but it kind of selectively likes the harder ground that is here because of the type of torrential rains that we get. Now, we can't do anything about the torrential rains, but we can soften up the ground a little bit so that the water will seep through the crust, and that'll allow us to take out some of these clumps and will allow some other things to grow. So that's the goal today. And I've got a special tool here to help me with it. It's called a Broadfork. Some of you may have heard of this. A Broadfork is a very special instrument that it's designed not to turn over soil, but simply to kind of break it up a little bit. So Broadfork, if you're worried about interrupting the soil food web that Elaine Ingram likes to talk about and others, you don't have to worry about that with a Broadfork, because it goes down, this one goes down I think 14 inches. And then it doesn't actually turn over the soil. It just kind of lifts it up a little bit and allows water to seep through and air to get in there as well. You know, you want air, oxygen in the soil as well. So I'm just going to give you a brief demonstration of the Broadfork here. What we do is we put it in here and then we get up on it. We stand up on it and we wiggle it a little bit. And what happens is that the tines of the fork will sink down into the ground. Depending on how hard the ground is, it'll either be difficult to do it, and you'll have to wiggle it back and forth a lot, or you'll be able to get it in fairly easily. And then we pull back. There we go. And that's as high as we're going to go with it. We're not going to try to turn the ground over. All we're doing is loosening it up. And that usually makes it loosen up. No, it's not yet. So I'm going to have to come at the other end from the other direction to get the clump out. So now I'm going to come from this direction here. I didn't get underneath the root. You know, clumping grass is known to have usually deep, very deep root systems as well. So, but I'm pulling the clump up again. Now let's see. Nope. Okay, now just like I said in the scything video, I'm going to have to change my orientation to the clump here and come at it from a different direction. So once again, I'm coming down here, going down in, pulling up, and here it comes up. Now, the other thing that we're going to have to do, because clumping grass has a very extensive root system, so we're going to have to take the metal bar and knock away some of the dirt that is being held by the roots. Otherwise, we'll never be able to get the clump out. So let me just take a look at it here. Here I come. What we want to do is turn this over because we're going to take the bar here again and knock all of this dirt, which we don't want to lose any of this soil. So we're going to knock away the dirt from the roots back into the hole. We can just shake this out, get as much of the dirt out of here as we can, and back into the hole. Here's a nice earthworm. We're happy to see that. Okay, so now the final thing is we want this clump. We're going to split it like this so we can lay it down and it'll be upside down, because the last thing we want to have happen is for this to reroot, and that's exactly what it'll do. So now tomorrow I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to put some other plants in here. So that's the last step. We don't want the clumping grass to simply reseed here. We've gotten rid of a clump. Now we don't want another one growing there. So let's just take a look because directly below the one we just took out is another small clump. And that small clump will become a big clump very soon. So we're going to take that out too. This apparently has a more significant root system than I first believed. This doesn't look like a very big clump of grass, but it has a very extensive root system. Now, I certainly didn't expect that. This thing is huge. I'm using the tines of the Broadfork to hit the grass on to knock off as much dirt as possible from the roots. Again, I'm going to create a butterfly and then I'm going to set it down over here so that it won't turn over. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to come through here tomorrow or the next day, and I'm going to plant something else in here where the clump was.